I let Minnie beat me at our next duel before Thanksgiving break. I hadn't rehearsed with her what we were going to do beforehand since I didn't actually know what to expect until Potsdam announced us at the first match of the day, but I just used blue magic to make her think that she was being attacked by bees. She was able to cast True Sight to dispel it and used a straightforward combination of red and black magic to take me out. I think some people suspected that I threw the match by how quickly I went down, but that's probably why we went first. No one would really remember our match amongst the dozens that followed it. And that was that. As soon as the duel was over, Thanksgiving recess had begun. The school was full of parents picking up their children and taking them home. Virginia, Donald, and Ellen all invited me to go with them to her parents' house for Thanksgiving, but I told them I wanted to spend the holidays with Hieronymous, and they didn't push me. I did tell Virginia to bring back some of her mother's baking, though, mentioning that even Hieronymous liked it. Virginia's eyes went wide at that, and so I hoped that she would bring no less than a feast for me when she came back. As soon as they're gone, I head over to find Daniel to make sure he knew what to expect for the upcoming break. Classes won't resume until December 2nd, I tell him, echoing what Potsdam had told us at the assembly last week. The library stays open and meals are served at regular times for the rest of us that are left behind, though. This is actually my first Thanksgiving on campus, too, so I'm not sure what Potsdam has planned besides the actual Thanksgiving feast. Oh, Daniel asks, what about your family? Aren't they going to miss you? I just shake my head. Nah, I've got all the family I need right here. Daniel just looks at me and frowns. You don't have to play coy with me, Tori. You saw the spirit lights in the other world just like I did. You come from a royal family. You can't just pretend you don't because you're mad at your family for something. I can't help but laugh. Oh, my young Daniel Callister. The truth is so much simpler than you would expect. Then why won't you tell me? He asks. You won't even tell me your family name. I know your last name is Brown, but that's a made-up name if I ever heard one, which shows you're trying to hide who your real family is. I don't know your real name either, I point out, and he seems to consider this. Fair, he admits, but you also won't tell me who your boyfriend is, despite the fact that you snogged him at the dark dance. I didn't see you dancing with anyone but me. Maybe you're really my boyfriend and you just forgot, I tease him. He looks stunned for a moment, then shakes his head. Tell me your name and I'll tell you mine, he insists, and I let out a sigh. It was going to have to come out eventually. It's Grabiner, I tell him, looking him in the eye so he knows I mean it. I am Lady Tori Brown Grabiner of the House of Grabiner. I knew it, Daniel says as his hands clench into fists of victory at his sides. You were far too familiar with Grabiner, lounging on his bed and all that. I knew he wouldn't tolerate that behavior from just an ordinary student. Yeah, I say as I shake my head. Brown is my real last name, though. I was raised as a wild seed, although I'm fully magical born, apparently. Daniel just shakes his head. I didn't even know that Lord Grabiner had any other children. I thought it was just Hieronymous. My parents never mentioned you. I can't help but flush. Wait, what? Is that why you don't want to go home? He asks. I know Lord Grabiner is desperate for a male heir to take up his position. Did he send you away and let you be raised as a wild seed because he was upset that he had a daughter? I blink at him, then shake my head. Sure. Why not? I knew there was something you weren't telling me, Daniel says as he seems to settle into himself. I give him a few moments for him to seemingly come to terms with this as I make a mental note to fill Hieronymous in on this latest development later. So, I venture eventually, if your real name isn't Daniel, what is your name? Oh. Daniel turns to me and smiles. It's Beige. I can't help but grin. Nice to meet you, Beige. He grins back as he takes my hand and shakes it. Nice to meet you too, Lady Grabiner. What? Hieronymous demands after I fill him in on what happened later that night. Daniel put two and two together, I tell him. He thinks that your father had a daughter and sent her away out of shame, and that daughter is me. Hence, that's how I'm Lady Grabiner. Hieronymous just sighs and rubs his forehead with one hand. What am I going to do with you, Tori? Well, not get mad at me for something that isn't my fault for starters, I tease him. He seems bordering on a mood, but I hadn't seen a true glimpse of Professor Grabiner in so long, it was easier to be myself around him. I mean, it was kind of funny watching him try to guess why we were so close, but it looks like he jumped to the wrong conclusion. Oh, has he? Hieronymous asks dryly. And what happens if he decides to discuss his suspicions with others, I just shake my head. I'm not too worried about it. Daniel knows the importance of discretion more than most people around here. That, and most people know we're not actually related. One can only hope, Hieronymous sighs. I am inviting him over for breakfast tomorrow. We can set him straight then. Or we can just let him figure it out on his own, I tease. What's the breakfast for? Just another check-in? Precisely. His parents are starting to ask prying questions into his social life here. I don't know why they don't just try to obtain this information from you. Yeah, I reply. Yeah, they did ask me about that. I may have written them back, telling them it was none of their business. Hieronymous stops what he's doing at his desk as he turns around to stare at me. What was that? I didn't use those exact words, I say quickly. I just said that I felt uncomfortable betraying Daniel's confidence in that matter. Hieronymous just sighs and wipes at his face with one hand. Do you see now why I asked to overlook your correspondence? I don't think I offended them, I say as I shake my head. It's not like it really matters anyway. Daniel doesn't seem to be doing a good job of making friends, and if he's dating anyone, I don't know who they are. Hieronymous seems to consider this a moment. And if he was dating anyone, are you certain he would tell you? I pause for a moment. I wanted to say that I was, but then again, I could see why Daniel might be reticent to divulge that to either of us. He knew that we were in correspondence with his parents, and he also knew there was a risk that something he said would be reported back to them. If he really did want to keep his new relationship a secret, then it would make sense that he would tell as few people as possible. No, I reply, but then again, do you think he's going to tell you if you come right out and ask him? No, Hieronymous replies with a shake of his head. But there are tells that you can use to see if someone is lying. The immediacy of his answer, the words he chooses, that should give us some indication as to whether or not he's hiding something. That seems mean, I say after a moment, and Hieronymous raises an eyebrow in surprise. I mean, do we have to ask him at all? I know his parents want to know, but we can just say that he's not dating anyone and be done with it, can't we? Beige came here to have a life as Daniel Callister. They're not necessarily the same person. Hieronymous seems to consider this for a moment. He came here because he sought the allure of a life where he wasn't tied to the responsibilities of his position. He is a young man far from home, learning to grasp the limits of his independence. It is, unfortunately, a situation in which I can relate all too well. Choosing to forsake those responsibilities can have lasting consequences, as I'm sure you well know. I bite my lip. I didn't want to ask him about Violet. I didn't want to say her name. But maybe if I asked him directly, I would finally get an answer as to what really happened in the other world. I've been meaning to ask you. I hesitate. What were you like as a teenager? Nope. I may have been brave enough to jump out a window, but I was nowhere near brave enough to ask about or learn about the truth of what really happened back then. At least, not quite yet. Hieronymous lets out a snort of good humor, seemingly ignorant of my inner conflict. Rebellious? Immature? Like many of your peers, I insisted that I was smarter than my superiors. I thought that the rules were in place to keep me from reaching my full potential. As you already well know, I learned the price of my foolishness in one of the cruelest ways imaginable. I just nodded my head. I'm sorry that had to happen to you. It's the safest thing I can think of to say. It's in the past now, Hieronymous says dismissively. Fortunately, you are much more mature than I was at that age. Hopefully this puts you in a position to be more helpful to Daniel Callister than I could be. Actually, I usually find myself drawing on your wisdom, I tease. Regardless of how you were when you were younger, you have matured into quite the capable adult, Mr. Grabiner. Hieronymous just smirks at me. If I manage to mature that much in 10 years, then I'm almost afraid to see what you'll be like at my age. At your age, I repeat with a grin as I shake my head. 14 years may seem like a lot of time now, but when I'm 30-something, the age gap between us won't seem as big then. Oh, Hieronymous asks, goading me on. And you're so sure we'll still be together then, are you? I am, I reply happily, because we tell each other everything and we don't keep secrets from each other. Well, because we communicate with one another. Well, because we actually invest time and energy trying to make this relationship work. At least I was pretty sure that last part still held true.